Hi, this is investment properties. The first topic is investment in commercial properties. So, the investment properties can include industrial, retail, office, land, and other specialized commercial operations. And again, there is no clear cut classification system. Uh, the focus is on the investors as opposed to the users, with primary consideration directed to key factors that ensure investment success. Basically, a well-informed investor must know the rewards and pitfall of real estate to make an informed decision. So again, there's an advantage to a commercial real estate, and there's also a bunch of disadvantages while investing in a commercial real estate. Advantages in a commercial real estate includes a high degree of personal control, opportunity for capital growth during inflationary period, additional cash through reduction of mortgage debt, higher than average rate of return in economic stable periods, tax sheltering possibilities, limited equity investments uh, while while gaining leverage through financing, physical presence like land and building, as opposed to commercial paper like stocks, with with less risk of becoming valueless, potential to recover capital through refinancing, flexibility through diversion of real estate interest, especially in the states. A few of the commercial disadvantages are lack of liquidity and time required for disposition. Disposition costs can be high given that such items as commissions and legal fees. Administration costs can be high due to constant care, attention, and management. Higher risk as owner is last in priority to be paid, and large capital investment restrict potential pool of investors. So again, let's look at the perspective from from a residential and comparing residential with commercial. So in case of the residential, the motivation is amenities for personal use and enjoyment, while in case of commercial, the motivation is to generate cash flows. In case of residential, the market essentially is kind of driven by local forces and factors, where in case of commercial, the market is driven by local plus regional and national and international factors. And in terms of mortgage, the mortgage in the case of residential real estate requires personal covenants, while in the case of commercial real estate, it is more reliant on the income generated from the property rather than the personal covenant of the borrower. The ownership in case of residential real estate is usually personal. In the case of a commercial real estate, there are various options. They can be corporation, partnership, joint ventures, REITs, etc. And the length of ownership for residential real estate is dependent on the personal situation, like job, income levels, and the length of ownership in commercial is quite flexible depending on the cash flows, investor objectives, and returns. And the type of occupancy in the residential real estate is self-occupied, or essentially the owner occupies it himself, while in case of commercial, it's usually tenant occupied. So, regarding the making investment decisions, registrants historically view commercial buying and selling public as two distinct groups: users and investors. Essentially, users are the ones who are going to be using that real estate for their own purpose. Investors are the one who are more concerned about the return on invested capital as their primary motivation factor. To elaborate more, the users share certain characteristics common to residential real estate. So basically, bias interest regard to property are used are not most. Primary interests include visibility, access, and location. Practicality of improvements is a consideration while accommodating staff and equipment. Decorative features of the buildings can attract tenants and improve future resale of the property. Overall efficiencies include building layout and structure can positively impact operating cost and maintenance. Investors are looking at more from return of invested capital, purchases cash flows. Present value of the future cash flow is a major decision making factor. The other aspect of with regards to the decision for investor versus a user is essentially the investor decision making process again goes to the same three functions: or need, risk, and return. So in case of a investor, the what drives an investor, essentially there is the first needs, requirements, things wanted and deemed necessary. Risk, what is uncertainty, chance, exposure, and vulnerabilities involving financial loss inherent in a business decision. And returns is a yield or a profit, and that's what drives the decision. So investors want to attain predetermined objectives, therefore need need assessment is primary, no matter whether objectives involved are expected rate of returns, stated period to hold an investment, the tax shelter opportunities arising from purchasing, or a long-term strategy to diversify real estate holdings to leverage. Armed with the need knowledge, salesperson then applies risk analysis. Last, he or she assesses whether a specific offering can achieve anticipated rate of return and to return the profit given inherent risk. In case of users, individual need factor heavily into building and into buying and selling decision. However, the property satisfies buyers or tenant requirements is opposed too often. However, registrants fail to realize that risk and returns are never far from the user's mind. So understanding needs, the needs are again divided into three aspects: investors or user objective, physical requirements, and financial requirements. In case of investors or user objective, general goals of the buyers, including type of property being sought, investment return, lease versus own, type of ownership, etc. Physical requirement means specific needs like HVAC requirement, transportation, site characteristics, and also there could be financial requirements like amount of capital, other financial resources, credit standing, financial history, etc. What are the risks in the decision making? There are essentially four kinds of risk. One is the financial, market, business, and building risk. So the element of risk applies to all investment decisions. Risk refers to the uncertainty, chance, exposure, and vulnerability imposed on an investor with particular regards to any financial loss that may accrue from an investment. Risk from a real estate perspective centers on fluctuation in income stream and the vulnerability of that stream to external influences such as the market trends, availability and stability of financing, degree of positive and negative leverage, and overall economic conditions. Risk is typically viewed as a primary consideration in any real estate investment. The ability to forecast and in some way quantify the impact of various influences on investment property is broadly described by the risk analysis. Complex risk analysis models and related computer programs do exist, but often go well beyond the practical need of a commercial brokerage. In reality, reliance on intuitive sense, personal experience, and historic market trends is more commonplace. Type of risk: financial, interest rates and purchasing power of the future dollar market, real estate market trends and occupancy rate, business, taxation, economic activity, investment climate, and building physical calamities. General and specific risk. Each segment typically contains both general and specific risk. Financial risk, for example, refers to the ability to preserve principal while ensuring return on that principal. From a general perspective, availability of finances in the marketplace may dictate ultimate return. However, from a specific perspective, particular leverage used within the individual project will also affect financial risk. With the market risk, the property is subject to general risk given the ups and downs in the real estate market, while the property itself attracts specific risk given its particular use. So again, there's a financial situation, market situation, business situation, and building situation. Financial is interest rate risk, operating costs increase, sales activity slowness, increase in inventory results, cause further rise in the operating costs. Market situation, occupancy rate rise, returns based on existing rent, lease renewal occurs, higher rent is unavoidable, lower profit results, less capital available for new equipment, competition arrive, prices drops. Business situation, tax incentive provided, and economic downturn occurs. Forecasted profit not realized, tax incentive removed, higher costs realized, a profit disappears, and building risk, resale building acquired. Substantial damage suffered, insufficient insurance coverage, new building code, zoning requirement enforced, increased costs results, profit is lost. Now, third aspect the third aspect of the factors in decision making, like need, risk, and the third one is return. One is the return of the investment and return on the investment. The return on the investment is a recapture of the initial fund at some future date through the cash flow, and return on the investment is the return on the funds invested through the cash flow, operations cash flow, or sales proceed cash flow. So essentially, both of this combined is return or the yield realized on the investment. Maximizing returns. So investors seek to maximize returns through revenue generated from the income property. Three concepts directly impact the yield realized. One is cash flow, leverage, and taxation. Now, looking at the cash flow aspect, the cash flow represents all money is flowing from an investment. Cash flow is fundamental to building wealth from an investment perspective. Cash flow is derived from two sources: ongoing rental income is operational cash flow, and appreciation. Appreciation is and appreciation, which is increasing the value of the building at the point of disposition. Like operating cash flow, the operations cash flow represent the periodic money received from the operations of investment. Cash flow can be positive or negative. Appraisers and real estate register and calculate a single year cash flow based on the annual and expense analysis to arrive at the net operating income. The annual debt service is then deducted from NOI. Annual debt service of NOI to arrive at the cash flow before taxes (CFBT). The cash flow can be analyzed from an after-tax perspective. Cash flow before tax is frequently used in the market value estimates, while cash flow after taxes is applied with the investment value estimate. Although the distinction should not be overemphasized, as the lines are often blurred. Potential income, rental income, 50K less vacancy and credit loss. 500 gives effective rental income, and then the other incomes: gross operating margin, net operating margin, cash flow before taxes, and cash after taxes. Sales proceed cash flow. Sales proceed cash flow represents the sales proceed of investment. Typically, sales proceed have been Sales proceeds have been viewed separately and treated as a capital appreciation. This approach was particularly popular in inflationary period when the operation cash flow was either small or negative, and the investment decisions were made solely on the anticipated sales gain. However, stable economic periods require more all-encompassing perspective on investment returns. Real estate investment analysis analyzes the interplay of both operation cash flow and the sales proceeds cash flow by determining the yield on the investment property. Capital appreciation, while valid, is only one dimension within the larger picture. Let's look at the cash flow rules. Now, there are some inherent rules in the cash flow. Like there are essentially three rules to look at. Rule number one: larger cash flow is better than the smaller cash flow. Second is today's cash flow is better than the tomorrow's cash flow, and after tax cash flow is better than the before tax cash flow. These are kind of pretty obvious. Of course, like a larger cash flow is better than the smaller cash flow. The more cash flow you get, the better it is. And today's cash flow is better than the tomorrow's cash flow because there has to be a discounting. There's a time value of money that is involved, and after tax cash flow is better than before tax cash flow because after tax is what remains within the investor. Cash flow and liquidity. Liquidity involves the ease by which the assets can be readily converted into cash. Funds held in checking accounts, savings accounts, and short-term guaranteed investment certificates are generally viewed as highly liquid, as opposed to holdings in the long-term bonds, mortgage, and ownership of real estate. Liquidation is often referred to in the retail sector and in the ability to convert liquid assets into cash. A liquidation is a sales. For a real estate purpose, liquidity in operation cash flow is important to ensure the continuance of the investment. Investors must be able to meet the cash demands of the enterprise in terms of the current and future operating expenses. Further, the marketability of the property plays in the equation at some future point. Investors will seek to sell the investment. Sale proceeds cash flows can be a significant portion of the overall returns. Register and concentrate on analyze the cash flows and discounted cash flows to evaluate effectiveness of the investment properties, while the ownership of the real estate is viewed as a non-liquid asset. Care in the selection process and prudent forecast of cash flows generated can address both liquidity and returns. Leverage involves the use of borrowed funds to make an investment in the real property in the hope of realizing a profit. In addition to monies necessary to pay for the borrowed funds, most commercial real estate transactions involve borrowed funds for leverage, thereby reducing the owner's initial investment and permitting him to participate in various projects with the defined financial capability. Leverage has a potential to increase owner's returns on an investment, but the risk is considerable. Three types of leverage are possible: positive leverage, negative leverage, and a neutral leverage. A positive leverage is a situation in which the yield to the investor exceeds the overall rate of return that would have been realized on the property had no financing been put in place. Positive leverage is basically a situation in which the yield to the investor exceeds the overall rate of return that would have been realized on the property had there been no financing in place. Neutral leveraging occurs when there is no increase or decrease in the yield as a consequence of the leverage, and negative Negative leverage occurs when exists when the use of borrowed funds has lower equity yield than the overall rate of return that can be realized had there been no financing. So let's say take this example: the property A, B, C, and D. So let's say the property A was the initial investment was 2 million, and the sale price was 6.5 million. The operation cash flow after taxes was, let's say, 72.5, 67, and 68 and 65.3 million, and the sales price was for the 2.8, and so on. So the cash flow after taxes, so sales price cash flow after taxes was this. The total was is the addition of both of them. The return on investment then is obtained as the difference in the total minus initial divided by the initial amount. Taxation. So cash flow and leverage. Cash flow and leverage asset taxation is a third dominant factor in the investment decision-making process. So to recap, the first was the cash flow, the second was leverage, and third was is the taxation. So tax shelter is probably reviewed as a financial arrangement which results in the reduction or elimination of taxes due. A real estate investment opportunity is normally judged in the form of four characteristics: the reliability and durability of the income stream, the opportunity to realize capital appreciation, leverage possible to maximize returns on investment, and tax consideration that apply to that particular property. Tax consideration include the analysis of tax shelter opportunities. Residents should have a general awareness of the significant tax provisions in the Income Tax Act. For example, the tax provide for different the Income Tax Act provides for different tax treatment depending on whether the property is used for business or investment income or as a private residence. While taxes are payable on the business and investment income, reserve residence is generally excluded from the taxation under the Act. Further, the Act also distinguishes between business income and property income when the rent is received by the investor from the real estate. The differentiation the differentiation of the business income and property income is important, as a significant distinction are made concerning the treatment of such income. Most importantly, the Income Tax Act provides for capital cost allowance on the income producing property and generally reduces the taxes payable on operations cash flow, as well as impacting final sales price at the point of disposition. Cash flow and taxation. Taxation liability impacts the cash flow and investment rental property from two perspectives. The illustrations provided showing the background taxation on the final returns. Capital cost allowance. So, like I said, tax liability impacts the cash flow and investment properties. So let's look at the capital cost allowance. Capital assets, though durable, have a limited lifetime and at some point will be replaced. Generally, the capital on the property is what the buyer pays for the property. Capital cost includes such costs as delivery charges and applicable tax, income tax, permit deduction are the part of the capital cost of the asset against the income. For the business, capital cost allowance is a maximum set under the Income Tax Act that the payers can claim for depreciation. Capital cost allowance is not a cash flow item, but rather a matter of taxation and tax deductible expense. CC acknowledges the existence of depreciation that is a result of wear and tear over the life of an asset and ability to offset income in relation to the cost of the asset. Calculation: the amount of depreciation allowed depends on the asset class. Most but not all buildings qualify for a 4% CC on a declining balance basis. One half of the amount is permitted during the first year of purchase. The rate of CCA applies to each class. Each class is specified as maximum rate. Taxpayers may permit any CCA based on the maximum by multiplying the CCA rate by the balance in the class. In the end of taxation year, only the amount of CCA actually claim is deducted. The CCA for under the straight line method. So that's there are two methods of calculation. One is the declining balance method. The second is the straight line method. Under the straight line method, the useful life of the depreciable asset must be estimated according to the regulation. The annual capital cash allowance taken represents prorated amount based on this estimate. The calculation for CCA for class 13 is use straight line as opposed to the double declining method. Again, in cases of a straight line, I think we don't have to use a one half rule for the first year. I think with this we are done for this. I just wanted to briefly go over some of the classes for CCA. The class 1 is most building made of bricks, the 4% rate. Most building made of brick stones before 1988 is 5%. Buildings made of frame, log, stick-on and frame, galvanized iron, galvanized is 10%. Kanai boats and other vessels is 15%. Property that's not included in other classes like furniture. And calculators and caches is about 20%. Aircraft is 25%. Automobiles is 30%. Passenger vehicles costing more than $30,000 if acquired after 2000 is 30%. Chinaware cutlery is 100%, and computer software, properties that are leasehold interest, and so on. That is what falls in class 13 uses this straight line declining method. I think with this we are done. Thanks for your time. Bye.